How vast do you think our universe really is? It is really hard for our minds to comprehend the immense size of the universe. Picture this: you walk 2 kilometers around your block, and you'd be happy for your little achievement. Now picture a city 300 kilometers away. It would take you hours to drive to. Now imagine a country 7,000 kilometers away. It would take you hours to fly there. And mind you, that is not even half the circumference of Earth. Now imagine our sun. It can fit 1,300,000 Earths inside it. And our galaxy alone has billions of stars. And the universe is made out of billions of galaxies. But the whole point of this rant was to ask this fundamental question. In such a vast universe, are we really alone?
The Air Force has recently made public Project Blue Book, an archive of UFO reports and investigations dating back to the 1940s.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Exactly goes on at Area 51.
The Area 51.
Area 51.
Area 51.
Are there any alien remains in Area 51?
During 1947, there were a lot of UFO sightings in USA. Many people all over the US reported seeing different flying saucers and discs in the sky. And this was the birth of the UFO conspiracies. These waves of UFO sightings began on June 24, 1947, when a private pilot, Kenneth Arnold, reported seeing 9 flashing UFOs in Seattle. He claimed that the UFOs were moving with a speed of more than 1,200 miles an hour.
Strange flying discs have been whizzing at 1,200 miles an hour over the western United States.
Check out this brief interview with Kenneth Arnold.
An ordinary man in an ordinary street in America. But this man started the 1947 wave of sightings that swept the world when he claimed to have seen from his mountain rescue plane 9 disc-like objects, roughly 45 miles away, flying at a speed of approximately 1,500 miles per hour near Mount Rainier, Oregon. The date? June 24, 1947. Later, when asked by a reporter to describe how they flew, Arnold said their motion was like saucers skipping over water. In the papers the next day, the world first saw the term flying saucer. On June 24, 1977, 30 years to the day after he first sighted them, Ken Arnold consented to speak to us. He had refused to make any public statements for the last 5 years. It's easy to see that after 30 years, he's still angry at the disbelief.
All right, here we've seen something, I've seen something, hundreds of pilots have seen something in the skies. We have dutifully reported these things. And we have to have 15 million witnesses before anybody's going to look into the problem seriously? Why, this is utterly fantastic. This is more fantastic than flying saucers or people from Venus or anything, as far as I'm concerned.
The greatest surprise was when Arnold reported his sighting to the nearest U.S. military airbase. He found on the wall of the commander's office this classified gun sight photograph, which bore a remarkable resemblance to what Arnold claimed he had just seen, and Shaver had discussed 3 years before.
Within 2 weeks of this incident, the media got flooded with UFO sightings from all over the states. Look at this map from that time. It shows the locations of different UFO sightings in USA. The media also tried to push the narrative that these UFO sightings were linked with nuclear testing facilities. Hence why there were a large number of sightings reported around nuclear testing facilities. During all of these strange incidents taking place, there was a farmer by the name of Mac Brazel, who owned a farmland in the state of New Mexico. He remembered that around 3 weeks ago, he had stumbled upon a strange wreckage of something, consisting of a tin foil, rubber, and a thin wooden beam. He could not really make of the thing to which this wreckage belonged to. A thought crossed his mind. That maybe this strange thing that he found had something to do with the UFO sightings craze. So he took this piece of wreckage to the Roosevelt sheriff on July 7th. This drew the attention of an Army officer, Colonel William Blanchard, who was the commanding of the Roswell Army Airfield, RAF. The next day, the Roswell Army releases a statement that the rumors about the flying discs in the sky had been true. Take a look at this report. But now here comes the interesting part. The very next day after making this bold statement, U.S. Army officials retract their statements and claim that the debris they found were not from a flying disc but rather a weather balloon. As a proof, they release photos of Major Marcel, where he can be seen with the pieces of this weather balloon. After this statement, this news died out. Media didn't cover this topic in depth and believed that it was just some debris from a weather balloon which had been misunderstood to be a wreckage of a flying saucer. But that's not all to the story. In late 1970s, there were reports of more UFO crashes and sightings in the New Mexico desert. The local rumors also state that there were thunderstorms and lightning which had caused the UFOs to crash in the desert, and this crash had killed the aliens inside the saucers. But wait! The story gets more interesting. In year 1980, Major Marcel releases his book called The Roswell Incident, in which he states his experience with this strange incident in detail. In his book he says that the debris he examined was, and I quote, "nothing made on this earth." After this book was released, people were convinced that the US government definitely tried to hide the truth behind the Roswell incident and all of the other incidents relating to alien life. Check out this interview with Major Marcel's son about the debris that Major Marcel examined during the Roswell incident.
Okay. Jess, how about just saying your whole name so we can make sure we get everything right there?
Jesse Antoine Marcel.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Antoine.
Antoine.
Okay. And you are a physician?
Correct.
And what field of medicine do you practice?
Well, I specialize in ear, nose, and throat conditions, tonsillitis, ear infections, you name it. Anything above the clavicle, I have to do with.
And you also are in the National Guard?
Correct.
Uh-huh. How long have you been serving in the National Guard?
Since 1978 or 79.
Jess, I wonder if I can take you back to the night that your father came home. Do you have an idea about what time of the night that was and what you were doing at the time?
Well, I was asleep, for one thing. I want to say it was very early hours. It was either very late in the evening or very early in the morning when he came back in. And I had to waken both myself and my mother.
And why did he wake you both up?
He had something he wanted to show us. This apparently was some debris or something he brought in from the field at that time, and I understand he was on his way to the airbase to deliver this, but he felt that this was unusual enough that he wanted us to see it first before he delivered it to its proper destination.
And what happened? What happened after he woke you up?
Well, he was, as I recall, very excited, and again he said, "I want to show you something," and so I got my house coat on, as did my mother, and he had gone out to the car and brought back in some metallic debris. I believe it was in a box. I know, I don't recall whether I walked outside with him or not, but he made it seem like the 1942 Buick we had was loaded with the stuff in the back seat and in the trunk area. At any rate, he brought the material in and spread it on the kitchen floor, and in an effort to try to piece it together. like a jigsaw puzzle to get some idea of form of it. But unfortunately, there's too much of it, too finely divided to do that.
How old were you at the time?
11.
Uh-huh. Okay. And when he spread all this material out on the floor, what was your impression about the what this material was like? How would you describe it?
Well, initially, just looking at it, well, what's this all about? You know, I'm sleepy out. But then when you get down and looking at it, it was the unusual character of the debris. And I want to say that he said something like this is from a flying saucer, but I'm not sure that he said that. But the meaning was clear that this is something very special. And he wanted us to look at it.
And what's your recollection about what the material looked like, felt like?
Well, I could divide it into three major categories. I'm thinking back on it quite a few times. There was a lot of rather thick foil-like material, kind of not a shiny aluminum, but burnished or a slate gray type of aluminum metal. There was black plastic type debris like bakelite, which was shattered. It was very brittle material. And then there were fragments of what appeared to be I-beams, relatively small, but the typical I-beam type configuration.
Anything else worthy of comment about this material that you recall?
Basically just the description of color, shattered type bakelite material. Yeah.
Now, how about what you described as I-beams? What were those like?
Well, they were, again, looked like the same type of material that the foil-like material is made of. Metallic, dull gray aluminum, except very light again. I did not try to bend it or stress it in any way, although the piece I remember looking at was about 12 to 18 inches in length. Both ends, I think, were shattered or broken off, wasn't a clean cut. And the material thickness appeared to be about 1/16 of an inch thickness.
And what color was it?
Again, it was a dull gray, like a flat aluminum finish. I guess that would be a good way to describe that.
Metallic?
Metallic, definitely metallic.
Okay. Anything else unusual about this particular piece of material?
Well, the most unusual part of this whole thing was what was on the I-beam, on the inner surface of the I-beam. Because as you look at it head on, there appeared to be a type of writing on the mainframe itself. This writing was definitely a purplish violet hue. It did have an embossed appearance because you could, if I recall, you could rub your finger along it and you could tell it had texture. I don't recall seeing any lines or letters of any kind, but it was more like geometric shapes. Or, well, it's hard to describe it. It was curved geometric shapes. There might have been some triangles and circles, but it was solid.
Is it possible you might have mistaken it for Russian, Japanese, any other language?
No way.
Anything like hieroglyphics?
Well, in my first impression was this is Egyptian hieroglyphics, but I knew enough at that time to know that it wasn't, because hieroglyphics usually have some animal symbols in it also, if there was none.
And the lettering, or we can call it lettering, of these symbols.
Individual symbols. They were not connected. Okay.
Were they were in color?
Yeah. Yes.
But they were on a surface that was what?
Well, the surface was the same color as the rest of the dull metallic gray.
So it's just the symbols that were in a kind of purple pink.
That's right. That is a color that caught your eye. Here in all this mass of metallic gray pieces, here's this flash of color.
What do you recall your father saying that night about how he came into possession of this material?
I don't recall a whole lot of the mechanics or the logistics involved. I do know he'd been going for quite a while. I'm not sure exactly how long he'd been going even, but he If I remember saying something about this came from Christ's side or from some fellow's ranch or northwestern Roswell.
And you said at the outset that he appeared to be excited.
Yeah, that's the reason he got us. I thought of it.
Why was he excited about this?
Because he felt this was something very unusual. He felt it was probably something we'd never seen before, would never see again. And again, I want to say that he said the words flying saucer, but I cannot be sure about that. I'm almost positive he did, but I can't recall verbatim what he said.
When you said that your father had been gone for some time, do you mean hours or days or something?
Again, my memory's kind of hazy about how long he was gone. I know he was maybe more than 12 hours, maybe a day or so.
And how long was he at your home that night with the material on the floor?
The total time there was about 15 or 20 minutes.
And what happened after that?
Loaded it back in the car and took off.
Do you know where he went?
Well, he was going back to the base. At least that was my understanding.
When did you next see him? Do you recall?
I think it was the next day, although I'm not absolutely sure about that either.
And did you have any conversation with him about what had transpired since you had seen him last?
Well, he would... Can I recall those conversations? I don't know that we had talked about it very much afterwards. The initial excitement had worn off, and then the whole deal kind of was put to rest. There's still a feeling like there's something very unusual about this. It was not, something commonplace like they would like to say weather balloon or radar target.
Your father didn't think it was a weather balloon or a radar target?
Never did.
Do you think it was?
Well, even at that young age, I had kind of an interest in electronics and weather and things like that. And I'd seen weather balloons and I'd seen pictures of radar targets. I was not one of them.
Was it like anything you'd ever seen before?
Not really. One thing that sets it apart, of course, was those I-beams with the symbols.
Did your father ever speculate about what it was, where it came from?
We would talk about it periodically over the next several years, perhaps, and we'd always thought that it was something very unusual. I think initially they might have thought it was even a Russian weapon or something. That was for the cover up or the varying the story, but later it was determined it was not a Russian thing, and so that left one other possibility that something from out of our atmosphere.
Was your father in the habit of discussing his work? I mean, he was in intelligence.
No, he was not.
Not in the habit of discussing his work. So I guess it wouldn't be real unusual for him to be rather quiet about it.
Yes. He was not given to, verbal diarrhea about things like that.
But he obviously did eventually talk.
Yeah, as time went on, the seed had been planted in the back of our minds that there's something very unusual about this. And from time to time, you'd read about some UFO sighting in the paper, and it would trigger maybe a little conversation about what this was.
Knowing your father as you did, what do you think motivated him to go public with this account as he did?
Well, this didn't happen for years, and he was a radio amateur. He loved ham radio, and I don't know the exact scenario, but I can picture that maybe they were talking on ham radios. He was talking on ham radio with somebody, and maybe the discussion came up about a recent UFO sighting, and he would say, "Oh, by the way, I was involved with one," and I could picture that as being the mechanism that this thing came out. I don't know that to be sure, but that's, I think, most likely the way.
Now that we have discussed the major incidents which lit the spark to the UFO conspiracies, let's now discuss the place to which these conspiracies are most commonly linked to. Yes, that's right. I am talking about the Area 51. Area 51 has been a subject to conspiracies for quite a while now. People claim that the US government has hid aliens there and that they are testing these alien subjects to better understand alien life. What you are seeing in the background is an old video on the internet about an alien, which claims to be real because the movement of the alien in the video seems to be very natural. Many experts in the 3D modeling and editing industry claim that this video is not edited. If this video is real and this is an actual alien, then this is very creepy, as the alien seems to have human-like movements and mannerisms. Coming back to the topic. Area 51 is the common name of a highly classified United States Air Force (USAF) facility within the Nevada Test and Training Range, a remote detachment administered by Edwards Air Force Base. The facility is officially called Holme Airport or Groom Lake, after the salt flat next to its airfield. Details of its operations are not made public, but the USAF says that it is an open training range, and it is commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapons systems. The USAF and CIA acquired the site in 1955, primarily for flight testing the Lockheed U-2 aircraft. There have been countless strange videos about UFOs flying around Area 51. What you see on the screen right now are the numerous warning signboards before the entrance of Area 51, which warns the general public to stay out of Area 51, otherwise there will be consequences.
It is against the law to fly a drone in a restricted area. Absolutely.
Area 51 was also made famous because of Bob Lazar, who claims to have worked in Area 51 as a researcher, and he claims that he has seen alien technology in the S4 section of Area 51.
Project was to back engineer the alien craft. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on.
So it's the reactor here powering the gravity amplifiers. Gravity amplifiers output goes into the gravity emitters at the bottom, and the resulting gravity beam or anti-gravity wave can be pretty much put anywhere you want to. And I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers and the level below the gravity emitters. And people call these large black rectangular areas on the top portholes. I believe they were some planar sensor array that just took in information from the surrounding area, whether it be patterns of stars or what have you.
Okay, listen, we know that we got you guys fired up. But now let me explain the mystery behind all of these events. Or shall I say debunk these events? Okay, so first, let's understand the history of Area 51. Well, to understand the history, we need to also understand the geopolitical situation at that time, which includes the Cold War. Area 51 was actually appointed during the Cold War, when there was rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union.
Paranoia was growing about communist infiltration of unions, the entertainment industry, and the military and government itself.
Area 51 was created for the testing and development of aircrafts. This is why in the 1950s the most important spy planes in US history were flight tested in Area 51 and the Nevada Test and Training Range, which is the largest military testing zone and government-controlled zone, which has an area of approximately 12,000 square kilometers. Since such secret military operations were being conducted in Area 51, it seems obvious why it was kept the most secret base. And of course, whenever information is withheld, there is an increase in conspiracy theories. In 1954, American President Dwight Eisenhower demanded a secret location where they could start a high-altitude reconnaissance program.
The story of top-secret reconnaissance aircraft really begins midway in the 20th century, in the darkest days of the Cold War.
2 officers from the CIA were tasked with finding a location where they could carry these tests to develop spy planes that could be useful for the spying of the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons. Annie Jacobson, in her book, Area 51, an Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base, discusses how they were able to locate a secret military base in the middle of a dry lake bed in a remote area.
It was a vast, dry lake bed known as Groom Lake. Today it's known by another name, Area 51.
This place was already a classified location where the government was conducting nuclear tests. In Area 51, spy aircrafts were being made. 2 spy aircrafts stood out extraordinarily. The first one is the Lockheed U-2 aircraft, which looks like this. The Soviet Union tested their first atomic bomb in 1949. It was almost impossible for the US to find out what was happening in these testing sites, because they did not have any satellites at that time. So in 1953, President Eisenhower creates a CIA covert program named the Project Aquatone. An airplane was to be built on a budget of $22 million that could fly 4,800 kilometers without refueling, carrying 320 kilograms of cameras with it, and flying at an altitude of 21,000 meters. An aircraft that would go undetected on radar and by anti-aircraft missiles. This is how their Lockheed U-2 spy aircraft was made, one of the most important spy planes in US history. Over the few next years, US was largely successful on spying on the Soviet Union by using this plane. But on May 1st, 1960, a U-2 aircraft was shot down by a missile in Soviet
Francis Gary
airspace.
Powers was shot out of the sky in his U-2, his aircraft destroyed. Years of hard-won secrecy for the U.S. intelligence community were wiped out in a moment.
Due to this event, US had to admit that they were spying on the Soviet Union. This time the US president puts more pressure on the military and demanded a better spy plane to be made that could go undetected and fly on a higher altitude. And this is how the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was made, which is still to this day the most fastest aircraft ever made, flying at a speed of 3,400 kilometers an hour at an altitude of 24,000 meters. So such a plane could not have been detected by a radar. It was very crucial to hide the testing of this aircraft, especially during the Cold War. So how could they have tested this aircraft while keeping it a secret from the world? CIA used UFOs. CIA gave wind to these conspiracy theories that there are UFOs flying in the sky.
In the language of the US Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Neither did they deny the claims, nor did they reveal the truth. These weird-looking fast-flying disc-like objects in the sky, are they alien aircrafts? This was a very good way to keep this program a secret. They let the people believe that these were flying saucers. Thus no one would find out that actually these were the US's top secret military aircrafts. This is said to be the reason why the flying saucer theory from the Roswell Incident was allowed to run on the media and in newspapers for a day. But at the same time, CIA knew that if the government admitted the existence of aliens, and also that they were running experiments on aliens, that would create an outcry in the country. This could have caused a widespread fear and paranoia among the people. That's why a day later, they released a statement that it was a weather balloon. Remember how at the start of the video I told you guys about the UFO sightings rumors in the Nevada desert during the 1970s? Because in 1970s the Blackbird SR-71 spy plane was being tested. And that is the reason why there were rumors about high-speed UFOs roaming in the sky.
The SR-71 roared skyward with maximum afterburner thrust. A legendary pilot was taking the first ever flight in a legendary airplane.
These facts were later confirmed in 1994. Now coming back to the Roswell Incident. The US government released the Roswell reports in 1994, and it states that It was actually a nuclear surveillance balloon to which the debris belonged to. The government changed its statement about this particular incident for a total of 3 times. Hence, when the 1994 reports were released, people did not trust the government anymore, giving rise to the conspiracy theories. Okay, so let's discuss why these military planes appear to be strange when flying. Well, the fact of the matter is that a normal plane usually flies around 10,000 to 12,000 meters high, but these spy planes can go much higher than that, reaching very high levels of altitudes. And planes like the SR-71 Blackbird crossing 24,000 meters of altitude. So obviously, when these fast-moving airplanes are going to be tested at such a high altitude, it may appear strange from a person's point of view who is standing at the ground level. Most of these UFO sightings are just strange-looking military aircrafts moving at a very high speed and at a high altitude. The US government has stopped using the word UFO for these unidentified objects because of its association with aliens, and now uses the word UAP, which means unidentified aerial phenomenon. In June 2013, CIA publicly acknowledged the Area 51 base and declassified all the information regarding this base under the Freedom of Information Act.
Newly released CIA documents officially acknowledge the site for the first time. But if you're looking to gain insight into aliens or spaceships, you might be disappointed.
We also got to know the exact location of Area 51 due to these declassified documents. It is located in the Mojave Desert in Nevada. In January 2017, 13 million pages of CIA documents were declassified, which have reports regarding the UFO sightings and different experiments that the CIA was conducting. Some documents were also declassified in January 2021.
Through the 1950s, UFO sightings become the convenient cover-up for U-2 flights. But on May 1st, 1960, America's top-secret spying mission is blown when the USSR downs a high-flying U-2.
Okay, let's discuss the credibility of the famous conspiracy theorist Bob Lazar, who claims to have worked on alien technology in Area 51. Well, he says that he studied at MIT for his master's degree. Well, there is no official record of his degree. And the reason he gives for this is that he was working undercover for confidential government projects. He also claimed that the alien aircraft was powered by element 115 and it had the capability of generating its own gravity.
Element 115 is a super heavy element, but it's a unique element. When it's exposed to radiation, it produces its own gravitational field, its own anti-gravitational field, and it's what's used to lift and propel the craft and create distortions around it.
But several years later, in 2003, Russian scientists actually synthesized this element and named it moscovium. And in fact, this element could not produce a gravitational field. Okay, so now we know that UFO sightings are not extraterrestrial, but rather man-made flying objects.
There were a lot of different data sets that came in that we looked at, tried to figure out what they were. There were some that turned out to be weather balloons, for example. In fact, there were several, but there were many that there is not enough data and sensor data. When we had a lot of sensor data on some of them, that we couldn't determine what they are.
It is believed that UFOs are highly classified government projects on which an agency of some government is working on. So these are not extraterrestrial objects. We have successfully debunked the possibility of aliens visiting us on the Earth in their UFOs. But we cannot end the video without discussing the scientific aspect about existence of aliens. And for this purpose, I think we are going to need a change in narration.
Hey, I will be your host in the last part of this video, as we discussed in the very first part of this video about the fact that we cannot even comprehend the immense size of the universe. Then how can it be that only Earth is populated with living organisms in such a vast universe? This is our universe, actually our observable universe. Its total diameter is 93 billion light years, which means that if an object is traveling at the speed of light, it would take 93 billion years to cover this distance. If we put Earth in the middle, it means that from each direction, a boundary of the observable universe would be 46.5 billion light years away. When we imagine the universe, we think of it as a bubble, which has a definite boundary. But the universe is like an ocean, and the observable universe is a tiny droplet in that ocean. And we don't know what's beyond the observable universe because its light does not even reach us. But even this observable universe is enough for the existence of aliens, because there are hundreds of billions galaxies, and in each galaxy, there are 100 to 1,000 billion stars. And even if only 1% of these galaxies have planets, and only 1% of these planets have life, and only 1% of life is intelligent, then still our whole universe should be filled with spaceships. Why? Because of the Drake equation. Drake equation is a mathematical framework in which different factors are considered, like the rate at which stars are formed, and out of those stars, what percentage of stars have planets, and out of those planets, how many of them are habitable, and out of those habitable planets, how many of them have intelligent life forms like us, which can travel in space. And keeping in mind these different probabilities, it is estimated that 10,000 intelligent civilizations should exist in our galaxy alone. But why is that not the case? Let's find out. Fermi paradox. The renowned scientist Enrico Fermi randomly had a thought during his lunch. He asked his co-workers, "Where are the aliens?" And every one of his smart friends stayed silent. No one could answer his question. Even after doing countless researches, launching hundreds of satellites, we have not even gotten a single signal indicating alien life. And that is why Fermi says that there are no aliens and we are alone. And this, my friend, is called the Fermi paradox, which might be a full stop of our conquest of finding alien life. This video has gotten too long already, but if you guys want us to dive into the concepts on why we don't have proof of alien life, we can always make a part 2. Just let us know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe.